Hi and welcome to this session, Business Central Power BI Deep Dive Tips and Tricks. And in this session, Renato and myself are going to introduce you into several topics. But first, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Steven Renders. I am a trainer consultant from Belgium. You can find my contact details here. I work for a company, Plataan, and I'm mainly specialized in Power BI reporting and all of the other interesting technical topics. And my co-host in this session is Renato. Renato, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Steven. My name is Renato Fajdiga, and I'm coming from Croatia. Currently, I work as a Dynamics 365 Business Central consultant and as well as Dynamics 365 Finance product manager in company Axilis. I am also a Microsoft MVP for business applications, and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer.
Thank you, Renato. Now, let's have a look at the agenda for this session today. And first, we are going to start with an overview on how to fetch data from Business Central, and Renato will be bringing you that topic. Next, I'm going to explain how you can build a good data model and why building a good data model is actually important. Then I will give you a demo on how you can implement an incremental refresh using Power BI and the query editor. Then I'm going to cover an example on, for example, how you can link actuals and budgets. So what you need to do if you have a report with multiple fact tables. After that, I will introduce you to some tips and tricks that you can implement in Power BI reports. And after that, Renato will demonstrate how you can integrate Business Central and the Power Platform.
Let's now deep dive into Power BI and Dynamics 365 Business Central. So to start with presentation, we should first understand how we can connect our Power BI with Dynamics 365 Business Central. In other words, how we can fetch the data from Dynamics 365 Business Central into our Power BI. So no matter where your data is stored, either in Business Central SaaS or Dynamics 365 Business Central on-Prem, so cloud versus your servers, you can create and build reports in the same way. You can use Power BI Desktop to connect to your instances and create Power BI reports based on Dynamics 365 Business Central data. When you are finished with your modifying your Dynamics 365 Business Central data and creating a Power BI reports, you can upload these reports to the cloud, to the Power BI service. There you can use, for example, predefined reports, which will help you to fasten your way of building the Power BI reports. What does this mean? That, for example, you can use predefined Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central Power BI report application and just provide your tenant name and your URL to your Dynamics 365 Business Central SaaS, and you will get out-of-the-box reports provided by Microsoft and built by Microsoft for you. You can use various Office 365 integrations like SharePoint or, for example, Power Apps. You can easily embed Power BI into Power Apps or Microsoft Teams. We'll see this later today. Also, what you can do in Power BI services, you can easily build the dashboards, which then you will build into some application like Workspace, and you can then share this application with your colleagues inside the organization. So this is the first step. The second step is, for example, to embed this Power BI report or the dashboard into your website or in other application. Or what is the topic of today is how you can present also these Power BI reports inside the Dynamics 365 Business Central. So the whole idea is that you get the data from Dynamics 365 Business Central into Power BI, you build the reports, and then you embed these reports into the Business Central. In this way, your end user, will not need to go to the Power BI service to find the report. He will have everything on the, for example, Role Center of the Dynamics 365 Business Central, or for example, on the list pages inside the Dynamics 365 Business Central. And to not speak too much, let's go to our first demo today, where I will show you how you can easily connect to Dynamics 365 Business Central with Power BI. And to start, I will open my Power BI desktop. And here I have the empty Power BI desktop. I'll click on Get Data. And first what I will show you is how you can connect Power BI to the Dynamics 365 Business Central on-prem. So here I will enter SQL Server. And here I need to enter my information about my server. Here I have my Business Central installed on my laptop, but this can be your server in your organization. So I will enter my server name and my SQL Server instance. Here I can specify, do I want to import the data from Business Central to my Power BI, or I want to use direct query. For these purposes, I will use import. And I will click on OK. In a few seconds, I will get my demo database from Business Central. And when I expand this database, what I can see is all the tables and views inside the Dynamics 365 Business Central. For example, now I will take a look for the items, or for example, item ledger entry, if I can find it. Yes, I have it here. I can choose item ledger entry. And for example, let's find item. Let's see what it is. These are my items. And here I can see some preview what I have inside my table. So I don't need this. I will find where it is. Then I will use this item ledger entry. This will be enough for my demonstration to show you how you can connect to your data. So here I can see all my tables from the Dynamics 365 Business Central. I have, for example, this item, or I can use this one, where I can see more details about my items. So these are actually the tables inside the Business Central. So I will also mark this one. And I can load this to my Power BI desktop. I will wait a few seconds to upload the data from Dynamics 365 Business Central to my Power BI. Here on the right side, I can connect my tables. So for example, I know that I have items and I have item ledger entries, which means that this is the one-to-many relationship. I can click on Manage Relationship and click on Auto Detect. If the system will find something, it will not find. I'll create manually. I will choose my item relation and I will select where it is, number, and here item ledger entry. I can use item number. And this is a one-to-many relationship. I will put both and I will click on OK. And this is now my relationship between these two tables. Now what I can do, I can go to my report and build simple report. So for example, I'm interested in how many items I have on each location. So for example, description. So these are my item descriptions, and I want to know how many items I have. So this is the remaining quantity of my items, and I want to know per location. So location code. You see how easily I built the reports, which will show me my inventory per location. Very easy in a few clicks. So this is the first case where I connected my Dynamics 365 on-prem with with Power BI desktop. The second step, what I want to show you is how you can connect Dynamics 365 SaaS with with Power BI desktop. And to show you this, I will open my Business Central SaaS. So this is my environment in the cloud. And here I see my sandbox name, my environment, and so on. And now to connect to my Power BI. I will copy this for any case, and I will go to get data and more. Here what I see, if I go to online services, I will find Dynamics 365 Business Central and Dynamics 365 Business Central on-prem. These are all data connectors actually for Dynamics 365 Business Central. If I click on Dynamics 365 Business Central and connect, in a few seconds, I will get my Dynamics 365 Business Central environments. Here I can find my Wave 2 sandbox. Let's check. Yes, it's Wave 2 sandbox. And here I have my companies. For this example, I built a small extension to show you how you can use your, let's say, custom developed queries to get the data from a SaaS environment. Why I'm using queries, why I'm using the Dynamics 365 Business Central connector, because I don't have access to the SQL database on the cloud. So I will open my Visual Studio Code. And here you can see on the right side, I have two queries. I have query item ledger entry and query locations. Okay. On the left side, I will show you. You can see my queries. So first one is query inventory. And you can see that here I have something called data access intent read only. This means that when I run this query, the system will get the data from a read-only copy of the Dynamics 365 Business Central database. So it will not target your live production database, but it will target your, let's say, read-only database, which is, let's say, a few seconds out of the date of your production. From the elements, I see that I have item ledger entry with my fields item number, location code, remaining quantity, and so on. But also, I see that I can nest additional data items, such as items, which means that in one query, I will get the data item from my item ledger entry, and I can also get the data from my item table. Okay. And here I have one locations query, which is built in the same way, where I have the details about locations. Why I need details? Because later I will show you how you can find your location per, let's say, city or country region. Okay, and these are my AL objects, so queries. So these are the queries, and I need to publish this as a web service. To publish it as a web service, I created small web services XML. And on the left side, you can see that I published my objects as a web service. Now, when I execute this extension and I return to my Business Central and go to Extension Management, I will see my extension right here. So this is my extension. And what I can find are my web services. So here I have my web services, and here I can find them. This is what I published from my extension. Okay, now these are web services inside my Business Central SaaS, which means that I can query them via OData. So I will go back to my Power BI desktop, and inside my Cronus BE company, I will find my queries. So query inventory and query location. And I will load this data. Okay. Okay, so this is okay. And now I have my query inventory and query location with the fields from my extension. What now I will do? I will create another report where I will show inventory, for example, number, remaining quantity, and, for example, name of the location. Okay, I'll fix this. Relationship. Close. So to be able to use the both data sets, I need to make first a connection, and I can do this like easily. I will copy the code, connect the code with location code, and now I have a relationship, and now I can see in which location I have inventory. So in one Power BI desktop, I'm showing the multiple data sources in report way. So this is the examples how you can use, for example, Power BI desktop to connect to Business Central Cloud and Business Central on-Prem. The disadvantage of connection with SQL is that you will not see the fields such as costs, because these are calculated fields, and you will not be able to see this in the SQL table, because this is something calculated inside object in Business Central. But if we, for example, take a look at my queries, here I will find the cost. So, and for example, if I remove this, if I find cost, you see that here I don't have the field called cost amount actual, because this is calculated field inside the Dynamics 365 Business Central.
Alright, in this topic I will explain how you can build a good data model for your Power BI report. Now you should always ask yourself the question, why is a data model important? And actually it's important for any reason. Most and for all, performance. If you notice that your report is really slow, and then typically it's because of a complex data model. Also, if you notice that you are using quite complex DAX formulas to do simple calculations, it's usually also the reason because you have a very complex data model. So how do you need to build a good data model? Well, actually, you always need to use a star or a snowflake schema. Let me demonstrate this. All right, so the trick to building a good data model is by creating a star schema. And here you see an example. Now you can start with the fact table, as you can see right here, which is a sales table. And that table contains the numbers you would like to analyze, which are typically amounts and quantities. Then you can continue by adding other tables, like in this case, a customer table, if you would like to analyze the sales by customer, and of course also a date table. So you surround the fact table with other tables, and if you continue to do so, you can end up with a data model that looks like this one. Here you see the sales table, and to the left of the sales table we have customers. Then there is the date table, there are resources, and of course there are also items. So the sales table is now linked to other tables, and the data model, when you zoom out, starts to look like a star. Of course, you can also link, in this case, tables like the customer and the sales people. And if you do that, you zoom out, and the data model starts to look like a snowflake. This is a simple data model. Of course, you can also go a little bit more complex, as you can see right here. Here we also, in the center of the data model, have a table, which is sales surrounded with other tables. And when you start to zoom out, this is actually still a snowflake. We have the fact table in the middle, but then it's actually linked to other tables, as you can see right here. For example, the sales happens in certain stores, but for the stores there is also a geography table. Sales can be attributed to products, but then products are divided into subcategories and categories. You can do so. And the main purpose is actually building a star or a snowflake and having all of the facts, all of the numbers you would like to analyze in a central table. Whatever you do, when you create a data model, do not create relationships like, for example, here, like this and like that, because if you do so, you get circular references, and this will actually end up in problems. Why is that? Because imagine you would like to analyze the sales, in this case by product subcategory. Well, then the data model has a choice of reaching there in this way or in that way. And depending on the visual that you use, you will get different results. So do not build circular relationships. Try to keep it simple. Use a star or a snowflake. All right, next topic is a very interesting one in which we'll investigate how we can implement an incremental refresh. Now, when you think about incremental refresh, what you should actually know is that it is actually possible to do that out of the box in Power BI. And when you have a look at the Power BI documentation, there is a section about incremental refresh. And incremental refresh has been actually brought to Power BI Pro. And you can follow this documentation, and it explains how to implement it. And many times it will work very nicely. However, for Business Central, this is not possible because Business Central is actually using data behind the scenes in the Power BI connector, and that data source is not supported for the incremental refresh features inside Power BI. So this means that we'll need to try to figure out a different way to simulate incremental refresh, and I figured out how to do that. So we are not going to make use of the built-in incremental refresh capabilities of Power BI Desktop and the Power BI service, but instead we are going to do a split of the data in Power Query. So it means that if, for example, you would like to incrementally refresh ledger entries because it might be a big table, what we'll do is we will import the ledger entries into Power BI Desktop. There we will split them into two tables, one with the old transactions that do not need to be refreshed, and one with the new transactions that need to be refreshed. Then we'll use some properties inside Power Query to refresh the one and not refresh the other. And then we'll merge them back again into a transactions table on which we can then build the report. So let's have a look at a demo on how this works. All right, let's have a look at what we will try to do. Here, actually, I have a data model which is importing sales lines. As you can see, all of the sales lines are imported. And on this data model, I'm going to implement an incremental refresh. And in the end result, we should see here all of the static lines which are not refreshed, and then here all of the new lines should become visible, and which are added actually in Business Central after the report has been set and the incremental refresh date has been decided. Here you can also see actually the total, the number of static rows and the number of blank rows. This is the end result of our report. To get there, I actually created a query. As you can see right here, we have a query called query sales lines, where I'm implementing the data access intent as Renato explained. And there is one data item which is going to fetch the sales lines from the sales line table. From that table, the fields I'm interested in are, for example, document number, document type, type number, description, quantity, amount. And then I'm also going to import the posting date, the shipment date, and I've also created a new field called last date modified. But the most interesting field here would be the shipment date, because this is the field I'm going to use to base our incremental refresh on, or as the cutoff date. Of course, once you have created a query object and you would like to have that available as a web service, and then in this case you need to create a web services file, which I have also done. And here you will notice that one query will be published. It's the query sales lines in the web services, so that Power BI is able to import that web service. All right, we are going to import that now into Power BI and then split it based on the cutoff date. All right, let's see how we can import this data. So in Power BI Desktop, you can select Get Data, select More, then the Online Services, and then we'll use Business Central. If it's the first time that you do that for Business Central, you will be asked to authenticate and you simply enter your credentials the same than you used to connect to a Business Central. I am going to use a Sandbox PBI because that's the sandbox that I used to create my queries. And as you notice, I have my sales lines right here. I'm going to transform these so that the Power Query editor opens. When I do that, I typically have a sales lines dataset, as you can see, with all of the sales lines. Let's not look at the data type or the document type, but let's focus on the shipment date column. As you can see, I have all of my shipments in here. All right, the column proofing tools, I don't really need them, so I'm going to simply disable them to have a close look at the dataset. The next thing that we need to do is we need to split or actually duplicate this. So if I duplicate this, I actually have two datasets. The first one I'm going to rename, for example, into static. And the second one I'm going to rename into incremental. Let me do that. Once we do that, we actually have two datasets. But I would like the first one to become static and the second one to become incremental depending on a date. So to do that, I'm going to create a parameter. So I will create a new parameter and I can give this the name, for example, cut of date. And then I will specify a data type, date or date time. I'm going to go for date and a certain value. Okay, so let's take 0909 and then 2020. This is now my cutoff date. I'm going to use this cutoff date to filter the table. So in the static table, I will say that the shipment date, I'm going to filter it, needs to be before this date. So needs to be before or equal to, and then I will go for my parameter cutoff date. All right. If we implement this filter, we actually notice the static table doesn't really change. And in the incremental table, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to also implement a date filter. I'm going to say it needs to be after that cutoff date. So I'm going to go also here for a parameter. And of course, if we do that, we'll typically notice that the incremental table is empty because at this moment, all of the lines are before the cutoff date. Okay, so we split the two tables. And then, of course, for the static table, I need to go into the properties and I need to say that this data does not need to be refreshed. All right. So for the incremental table, this needs to be refreshed and loaded into the report. But for the static table, it needs to be loaded into the report, but it does not need to be refreshed. All right. When we do that and we do the close and apply, both of these tables are going to be loaded into the data model. Give it a couple of seconds and the data will appear. All right, the data has been loaded and we can see the two tables coming in. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use a DAX formula to union these into a new table, which I'm then going to use for the report. So what I'm going to do is I am going to use some DAX table tools, in this case, to calculate a new table. And the new table will get the name sales lines, as you can see here. And to do that, I'm going to use the union function. And this union function is able to combine these two tables, the fixed table and the new lines, into a sales line table. Here in this table, we can see the sales lines because I have this fixed table, I have the static table, and now we have the sales line table. These two have been unioned into the sales lines, which means I can hide them now by using the hide in report view button. Okay, that's it. I have my table in which the incremented refresh has been built into. And now I can use that in visuals. Let's do a test. Let's create a new sales line with a date after the cutoff date. And then we should see that appearing into the incremental table and not in the static table. All right, in Business Central, I'm going to add an item to the data set. It doesn't really matter which item that I select. Let's go for the Athens desk. I'm going to ignore the warning about the shipment date. I'm going to order 4 pieces. And then I'm going to change the shipment date into, for example, let's say 2020, Stephen. All right. Which means that this new line should now be picked up by the Power BI report in the incremental table. Let's have a look. Let's try to refresh the data. And after a couple of seconds, we should now see an incremental record coming in. Voila, we can see that. So this actually is not a static record. This is the new record that I entered, and it's not in the static table. And voila, you've seen at how you can create an incremental refresh. Cool. The next thing that we'll have a look at is an example of how you might be able to link actuals versus budgets. Now, the example is actually focused on actuals and budgets, but the theory is actually about having multiple fact tables in your data model. So what you need to do to be able to link them. And in this example, we will use the ledger entries and the budget as the 2 fact tables. And the problem that we need to overcome is being able to link them so that they can become actually one fact table. And I will demonstrate how we can do that, but in my demonstration, the end result will be that you will be able to see the budget per ledger entry, but if there was a certain budget for ledger entries and there were no actuals, you will not see that. There are also different ways of creating the data model, and I'll also make an example available on my blog where you can see, for example, the complete comparison between actuals and budget. So what is the actual even if there is no budget, what's the budget even if there is no actual, and of course also the combination. But this is kind of a more simplified example, but you can also learn quite a lot from that. So without any further ado, let's have a look at a demonstration. All right, to create a Power BI report with the GL entries and budgets, we need some queries. And I will start with a simple query in which I'm going to import some GL account information. You can see I have the account number, name, category, description, account type, and the posting type. I'm also going to import some dimension set entries, so I'm able to link these dimension set entries with the GL entries. Of course, I also need a query for the GL entry table, where I will import the account number, the name, the posting date, dimension set ID. And also take a look, I am grouping and calculating a subtotal on amount and quantity to limit the number of GL entries I would like to import. Similarly, and I'm also going to create a query for the GL budget entry table, as you can see, where I'm also implementing a group. Once we have created these queries, we can very easily publish them by creating here the web services file. And the next thing is then importing the data into Power BI Desktop. Here I am in the Power Query editor of Power BI Desktop, where I imported all of the different queries. You can see dimension, set entry, GL account, GL entries, and so on. Now the dimension set entry contains my dimensions. As you notice, there are actually all of them. So what I actually did was I filtered this table to have separate departments and customer groups. As you can see right here, here I have a customer group table and here I have a departments table. And the trick is to actually duplicate dimension set entry and in the duplicated table implement some filters. The next thing is then importing GL entries and the budget. And as you notice, I will get back all of my columns. And the same is actually also valid for a budget. Now, both in the budget table and in the GL entry table, I have a date field, the posting date for the GL entry and the date of the budget. And based on that date field, I will then add some extra columns. For example, in the GL entry table, I'm going to include a month, a year, and a year-month column. And based on that, I can then combine year, month, and account number. And this year, month, and account number is indeed for the GL entries. In the budget table, I'm going to do something very similar. Based on the year of the budget, I get the month, the year, and the year months. And based on that, I can also combine year, month, and account number. So here I can see per year, per month, and account number what is the budget. And here I can see what is the corresponding actual. Once you do that, you can very simply load the tables into the data model, and you can use that year, month, account field to link the GL entry table and the budget table. And that's it. If all goes well, you should have a many-to-one relationship. Based on that, the next thing is then to get the budget into the GL entry table. And because the two tables are linked, that's something that you can very easily do by creating a calculated column. As you can see, the budget is the sum of the amount in the budget table for the entries linked to this GL entry. And this means that for every GL entry, I can see the amount as it comes in from Business Central, but then also the budget. Everything is in the GL entry table now, which means that if I would like to, I can simply hide this in the report view and continue based on the GL entries themselves. Now we have a star data model. I can create some measures, and to create these measures, I have my measures table. Let's have a look. I have a total amount, which is the sum of the amount field in the GL entries. I also have a total budget, which is the sum of the budget in the GL entry table. Then based on the account type, I can say if it's an expense account, yes or no, to calculate the total expenses. So the total expense is the total amount where the account is an expense. Very similarly, you can also do that for profits and revenue. So the revenue is actually the sum of the amount where the account is revenue. The profit I have also calculated as being the total revenue plus the total expense. Once we have these measures, we can then also implement a date table. And the date table I have created using the calendar auto function, which will automatically generate a date table. And then in this table, you can also add some columns if you need them. Once you link the date table with the GL entries, you can then also create some more interesting measures, like the total amount last year, which is the total amount for the same period last year. So similarly to how you calculate the total amount and the total amount last year, you can then also do the same thing for the expenses, the profits, and the revenues. I could even do that also for the budget, of course. Once we then have created all of these fields, it is pretty simple. I can put them into visual. So here I get a general overview on the account types and subtypes and accounts, where I can see the total amount per month. Okay, and I can filter that on different values. I can also very easily compare the actuals versus the budget. I can do that per account, per month, as you can see. And I can compare amount and budget. Based on the total amount and the total budget, you can also calculate the percentage to see if you are over or under budget. And that percentage is actually also a DAX formula, where we create variables for the total budget, which is the baseline, the total amount, which is the value to compare the baseline with, and based on that I can create a percentage to see if I am over or under. Once you have all of these measures, it's a matter of putting them here in the visuals. I can compare actuals versus budget. I can have a look at the revenue versus expenses, the revenue this year versus last year, the same for the expenses, and of course also the profits. So it all comes down to building a good data model, linking the two fact tables so that you are able to bring over the amounts from the second fact table into the first fact table. And then you simply have a star again on which you can let loose your DAX formulas and visuals. Let's now have a look at some interesting or useful tips and tricks which are nice to know when you are creating Power BI reports. And I will be discussing how you can embed Power BI reports in list pages, how you are able to use, for example, the Power BI team, how you can implement a drill through, and how you can also get some table information. But let's have a look at the examples themselves. The first one I'm going to have a look at is how we can make it possible so we can embed Power BI reports into list pages. What you need to do to be able to get that up and running. Well, let's have a look at an example. Here in Business Central, when I go to my customer list, I can see that there is a report here. At the right side, a Power BI report, and when I select a customer, the report is updated. Very similarly, if I would go to the item list, I will also see a report there, which is linked to the item that I select. You notice that when I go from this item to the next item, a certain report is visible. Well, what do you need to do to be able to do that? Two things. First, when you create your report in Power BI Desktop, you need to make sure that the report itself has a filter which is available on each and every page, which corresponds to the primary key of the page you would like to plug it into. If I would like to plug in this report into the item list, this needs to be the item number. Of course, you then also need the item number in the dataset. I've also done the same thing for the customer's order intake. Here you see it is the customer number that I am using. The second thing, which is extremely important, is the name that you give to your report. It needs to start with the name of that list page. So for the customers list, it's customers, and for the item list, it's items. Once you do that, you can very simply publish your Power BI reports, and they will become visible in Business Central when you try to select a report. If I try to select a report from, in this case, the items list, I can see the reports that contain the name items, and for customers, it's very similar. That's it. That's what you need to do to be able to enable that. All right, the next tip or trick is how can you create reports which have the same look and feel than Business Central? Is there a team that you can use? Is there a Business Central team? Let's have a look at a demo. Well, inside Power BI, what you notice is that you can go to the View menu, and there you can select one of the available built-in themes. Of course, you can also go to the theme gallery, and if you do that, a website opens where you can find many more of these themes that you can use. If you search here for Business Central, you will end up with a theme created by Microsoft and which has the look and feel from Business Central. What you can then actually do is you can very simply download the JSON file. And once you downloaded the JSON file, you go back to your Power BI report and you very simply browse for it and import it, and then the theme will be applied. For our next tip, we'll have a look at how we can implement a drill through into a report. For example, if you have a look at these GL entries, or a report where there is a matrix that performs some summarizations or aggregations, sometimes you would like to know where does this number come from. Can I drill through and have a look at the details that make up this amount? Of course, you can. Let's have a look at it together. All right, here we are in Power BI. And imagine that I would like to implement this kind of a drill through on a GL account to see where the details come from. Well, what you need to be able to do so is to create a new page here in Power BI Desktop, where you, for example, create a table based on the GL account and GL entry numbers. And the important thing to do on this page is to create a drill through filter. So in the drill through pane of this page, you add some fields from the dataset. For example, the GEL account name, the account category, the account subcategory, and the year number. And when you do so, from that moment on, you can go, for example, here and do a right click on one of these, and the drill through should then become visible, allowing you to go to that page to see the details. So it all comes down to creating a new page where you have some drill through fields enabled. Then for our last example in the tips and tricks, there is a nice to know, and there is a table information page in Business Central that displays information about all of the tables in your database, and you can see some attributes like the number of records and the size. And of course, you can also import that data into Power BI. Let's have a look at the demonstration. Important to know is that to make this work, we need a web service. And the web service needs to be based, for example, on page 8700, which is a table information page. So I'm calling this the table information web service. You cannot create a query based on this page, because when you try to publish that query, you will get an error. Let me uncomment here. And the error that we typically get is that table information is not accessible inside of an extension. We should ask Microsoft to make that public. But anyway, without having the table accessible, I can still use it in a web service. And then I can, of course, use that to import it into Power BI Desktop. And what you notice is that we get quite some interesting information, the company, the number of records, the record size, and so on. And based on all of these fields, I can then even do some calculations, the average number of records per table, the average record size, and so on. And then it's a matter of creating some visuals. As you can see here, I have through companies, Kronos USA and Kronos Advanced. I can see how the data has been divided in there. I can see some tables, the number of records and record size. I can slice and dice here and try to investigate which tables occupy most of the space, for example, in my database. And then based on that, I can decide which data I might not require anymore. So a very simple example, a very simple table, but a very nice visual or report to create, to analyze where most of the size in your database is stored.
Thank you, Stephen, on these really nice demos. Very powerful what you can do with Power BI and Business Central. Now I will continue with cases when you want to use Power BI reports inside other tools. And for that, I will start with awesome integration of Power BI and Microsoft Teams. When speaking about integration of Power BI and Microsoft Teams, we are speaking about embedding Power BI reports inside the collaboration tool. So I'm using Microsoft Teams every day, and I want to have my Power BI reports and track my data inside the Teams without opening the Power BI or remembering which Power BI application I need to use. Also, I can use Power BI which reports which are based on Business Central and present them in Microsoft Teams. And this will give me insight into my data and business in one click. There are three options to integrate Power BI report and use it in Microsoft Teams. First is Power BI tab. This brings you possibility to embed interactive reports in Microsoft Teams channel or chats. Second one is Power BI applications, which will bring you entire Power BI service experience into Microsoft Teams. You are going to interact with all of your Power BI content right in Microsoft Teams, which will bring you your personal experience of Power BI. For that, you will need a Power BI Pro license. And one very simple and easy way to use Power BI inside the Teams is chatting Teams, where you can quickly start conversation about reports and dashboards in Microsoft Teams. So let's see how we can embed our Power BI reports, which are based on Business Central data, into the Teams. Open the Business Central, and here I will see my
Power BI. When I go to the home, I will see my reports, dashboards, and so on. And for this, I prepared and I installed already one application. If I go to the apps, I will see Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central application. So this is application for sales. Currently, this application is connected to my environment, so my Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. And when I open one of the reports from this application, for example, this one, I can see my item sales dashboard, some other statistics, customer sales, and so on. I also have some other reports like this one. And now I want to share these reports inside my teams. And for that, I created my sales and inventory teams channel. Teams, and inside the teams, I have different channels. For example, I have channel about sales representatives. And I want that my sales representatives have access to these reports from the Power BI. When I go to the teams, I can click on Add and add a tab. So I will add Power BI tab. And here I will find my Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central Sales application. And inside this application, I have the reports. For example, this one. And here I will just rename it to have it like the 25 PC sales. And I will save. In a few seconds, you will see my reports, which are the same reports from Power BI inside my teams. So I can navigate through these reports. I can filter the reports, for example, if I want to filter, and so on. So this is the simple way how you can embed Power BI report inside the Business Central. The second step, second way which I showed you was Power BI application inside the Microsoft Teams. When I go here on the left side, I can add Power BI application. And now what will open is something similar what I already know. And this is my whole Power BI experience inside the Microsoft Teams. Now here I can, let's say, extend this, and I can go to my report and use it. I can share it, I can edit it, for example. And here, for example, I can change the colors for, let's say, data colors that I want here to be this one. And I can save these reports as well, or save as, or share this in SharePoint Online, and so on. So very easily, you can also edit the reports from Microsoft Teams. So this is actually Power BI embedded inside the Microsoft Teams. Okay, I will go to my Teams. And here I have something called Inventory Workers channel. And for this purpose, I have on my workspace, I have my inventory by location report. Here I can see what are the inventory by location, what are its unit cost, and so on. And now I'm working with my Power BI, and I want to say, for example, have a meeting with my team of inventory workers about my inventory and so on. And I will easily just say chat in Teams. It will open the pop-up, and I can say to who I want to share this. And I will say inventory workers. It will automatically recognize that it is sales and inventory team, and the channel is inventory workers. Now let's try share. Okay. In a few seconds, I will get the link inside my Microsoft Teams, which is shared with all my users who are part of Inventory Workers channel. They can open it, and it will guide them directly to this report. So very easy integration with Power BI and Microsoft Teams. Another great example which I want to show you is how you can use Power BI inside the Power Apps. And I'm calling this Bi-Directional Integration. Why? Because you can create Power App based on Business Central data, and in this Power App, embed Power BI report. Let's see how we can do this. I will go to the makepowerapps.com. So this is my home screen where I can make new applications. And for today's presentation, I created one application. And I will go to the edit. Now you can see how you can embed Power BI into the Power App. In a few seconds, I will get my application open in edit mode. And what you can see in this screen. Here I have the list of my items. If I zoom like this, I run my application. Here I have the details about my items, so what is inventory, and so on. But on the bottom, I have my Power BI report. And I can easily navigate through my items and find, and the Power BI report below will be filtered based on my data from my gallery. So let's see where I have some more stocks. I think that it is here. Yes. And here I will see what is the, let's say, stock for my item. I can see more information when I hover with my mouse over. I see that I have 38 pieces of this item on my location called empty, which is, let's say, not a good example. But if I go to the item, I see that I have some items on the west location, 15, something on the east, and so on. So very easy. How you can do this? When you insert a chart in Power BI tile, you will need to choose which report do you want to embed. So in this case, I choose my inventory dash. So it is important that you have this report embedded to your dashboard. And when I open this URL, you'll see here that I have this report. So this is the inventory dashboard, and this is my tile. When I go here, this is my tile. Good. Okay, now when I go to this tile and I find tile URL, what I will see here that I'm filtering my data source. So this is my query inventory. If you remember from the first scenario, first demo, this is my data source, query inventory. I have field item number, and here I am passing the selection, so my number, to this query. And I'm filtering how I'm playing with my application. So like this. So very easy, you can embed Power BI report into the Power App. And now why I'm calling this bi-directional integration between Power App and Power BI is because of this. When I go to my inventory by location, and I click edit, here you will see that I can insert a Power App visualization inside my Power BI report. And here I will just drag and drop one field. And system will ask me, do I want to create a new Power App or I want to choose a Power App? So you see here I have my inventory application and I will add this. Skip. And you see, now for years I used Power BI as a reporting tool, but now I can also enter the data into my ERP through Power Apps, which is embedded into the Power BI. So if I go, for example, here, I can change the name of the item, I can change the type, I can create, for example, some scenarios where I have some information about the inventory or something like this. And I can save this. Okay, and this is very simple way how you can utilize all the Power Platform tools from Power BI to the Power Apps, and together with Dynamics 365 Business Central, I think that you can you can't think about scenario which you will not be able to do with these very powerful tools. And with this demo, we came to very end of our sessions today. We would like to say thank you all for watching us and participating in this BC Tech Talk. If you'd like to stay in contact with us, you can contact us directly on the emails, which you can find on the slides, or find us on the LinkedIn profiles. So feel free to contact us, and see you on our next sessions in another conferences. Thank you very much.
All right, hereby we would like to thank you to have followed this session, and of course feel free to contact us in case you might have any questions.